and welcome to the Making It in Asheville podcast. My name is Sarah, and this is Tony. We are your host. And today we are so excited to be interviewing Jael, who is the founder of French Broad Chocolates, which is one of the best chocolate shops here in town.
And I feel like, is it French Broad Chocolate Factory? Or what is the correct? What is the Sorry, we might run it back, but what, French Broad Chocolate Factory, French Broad Chocolates.
Well, yeah, we've got our company name, French Broad Chocolate, and then we've got a couple of location names. So we have French Broad Chocolate Factory and Cafe, and we have French Broad Chocolate Lounge and Boutique. Ooh. And yeah, we're just a family.
Hopping into a very technical question, are they different LLCs?
No.
Okay.
It's all one umbrella company. For better or for worse, that's the structure. All one.
Got it. Cool. Well, that's a good clarification because I feel like I've definitely come across both names and I've always wondered, is it Lounge Factory or just French Broad Chocolates? So that's good to know.
And perhaps, though we don't teach a geography class on making it in Asheville often, where are these three different places located? Are they all one facility? Where might people find them? Because at least one has perhaps the real estate corner in Asheville as home base.
I'm curious about which one you think is the best. No. So our Chocolate Lounge is located on Pack Square in downtown Asheville, right next to the Art Museum. And our Chocolate Factory is located on Riverside Drive, right along the French Broad River, our namesake, and as part of the Ramp Studios, which is an amazing collaborative, creative community of artist studios and makers that all reside in this shared space.
Yeah,
Awesome.
It's funny. I think you guys are the third person we've interviewed from that space. We also have interviewed Strength Ratio and then Ginger's Revenge, which was last season. So we're hitting up the whole Ramp Studios.
Oh yeah, we've got a lot of good people here, so I'm sure you'll be interviewing more people from Ramp.
Most definitely. Well, there's so much to unpack here that I think I want to go back and talk a little. I think most people know that, okay, French Broad Chocolates makes chocolate. If you ever visit Asheville or live in Asheville, you're probably familiar with kind of what you guys do, and we'll get more into that later. But I want to go back to the defining moment of where chocolate became an important part of your life.
So chocolate became an important part of my life in it was early 2000s. I was at a point in my life, I was in my late 20s and was feeling a little bit lost, a little bit like I didn't know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I wanted a life of purpose and meaning, but I didn't really have a sense of direction of what that looked like. During that time, I went back to grad school. I was attending business school at the University of Minnesota. And that was, just a way to pursue progress. And while I was in school, I also started to discover chocolate as a passion. And I began to make truffles and bonbons and caramels at home just for fun, to share with friends and family. To have a bowl of truffles, on a side table is a pretty powerful thing. And during one chocolate making session in particular, I was in my kitchen in Minneapolis, and I was hand rolling dark chocolate truffles. So that's a very, repetitive, meditative process where, you pick up a ganache center and you roll it in chocolate. So my hands were literally covered in chocolate, and I'm just doing this process. And I literally began to feel my hands tingle. And I stopped what I was doing and I looked at my hands and I looked up and I said, chocolate is the thing that will make me happy. And that wasn't coming from my rational brain. It wasn't, it just was feelings. It was just an intuitive feeling. but Dan was with me at that time, and had kind of the dreamer mentality and took that seriously. And so we pursued that inkling together, and that's the moment. That's the moment. There's lots of story that unfolds from there, to get us to where we are today. But for the moment, that's it.
I think it's amazing that you had a actual struck by lightning moment.
Yeah.
Sometimes I fear that people are like, I don't know, it's like a rolling start. There wasn't exactly a moment I could pinpoint. That's amazing. And now to just draw towards the near point of that long line, what kind of crazy things has happened in the last year for your business? One, at least last holiday season stands out for me, or at least this year, USA Today might be one of the buzzwords. Like, what crazy things have happened since the hand tingling moment?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I guess highlights along the way. Dan and I acquired a school bus, a 40-foot retired school bus in Minnesota, and converted it to run on used vegetable oil. Crazy. And put solar panels on the top and emptied the interior of the bus and turned it into an RV. And we drove from Minnesota to Costa Rica. And
I don't know geography well enough. That sounds like not an easy trip.
Yeah. It's, a lot of people think Costa Rica is an island for some reason, but it's not. It's an isthmus. So it's in between the Caribbean and the Pacific. It's in the southern part of Central America. So we drove through Mexico and most of the countries in Central America to land in Costa Rica.
And
why did we go to Costa Rica?
Collecting vegetable oil as fuel the whole way? Like, hey,
mostly we collected it before Mexico.
Yeah.
In the States, used oil from Chinese restaurants was the big score. Now it's much more tightly regulated now that the biodiesel market is a little bit more established. At the time, it was just pumping it out of grease dumpsters. Really gross.
Wow.
Dedication. So Costa Rica, we spent a couple of years in Costa Rica. We got the opportunity to be in a place where cacao grew. We got to be to visit farmers, visit farms. That's the first business we started was there. We started a restaurant called Bread and Chocolate. We were not making chocolate at the time. We were buying Costa Rican chocolate and making breakfast, lunch, and desserts using that chocolate. And we were there for 2 years. We had our first kid there. So he spent his first year and a half in Costa Rica. He's a Costa Rican citizen, so that could come in handy if necessary.
Heard.
Yeah.
About when was this timeline wise? 2000?
We moved there in 2004. And our son Sam was born in 2005. And we moved back in the second half of 2006 and moved to Asheville.
Wow. And just threw a dart at a map, how did Asheville, because Minnesota doesn't seem like a pipeline into Western North Carolina, but I don't know.
Right. No, it was like that, but with a lot more asking for advice from our community. So we were in a small tourist area in Costa Rica, a surfing and fishing village on the Southern Caribbean. And we were looking for a change and looking for the next chapter, and started talking to people about where they lived and where we might move. We were pretty open. We looked at a place in Panama. We visited a place in Vermont. And over, people kept saying, you guys would love Asheville. And I'd never heard of Asheville. Never even imagined I would live in the South. But we heard it enough times that we decided we better pay attention to that and follow it. And we came here. We drove the bus, got back on the bus, this time with our 1.5-year-old toddler. And and came to Asheville for 5 days. And of course, as you know, it's lovely. It's beautiful. The community is amazing. The food scene is amazing. The arts and entrepreneurial scene is so supportive and wonderful that we decided after the 5 days, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That sounds like I want to say similar story, but not exactly because we didn't go to Costa Rica and back. But people, when we were thinking about moving, people, it kept coming up, and it was never a place that we had really ever thought about before, and then visited and loved it. So definitely can feel that.
It definitely attracts people. There's lots of lore around that locally about energy vortex and whatnot. But, it definitely draws people, and it seems to draw creative people who want to build and create and connect. So that really appealed to us. And, that was in 2006. So it's been, coming up on 14 years.
Wow. Yeah. And my guess is that it had to be, there wasn't a RAD, I don't think, 14 years ago, right? Or
it was definitely, there was a River Arts. Yeah, the ramp
no
studio
ramp.
was definitely still, an old pallet factory.
Wow.
The River Arts District was, established, but probably rougher around the edges than it is now. The food scene was definitely established, but nowhere near to the level that it is today, with national recognition and so many amazing chefs and makers. A lot's changed in the 14 years, but I think core identity still feels so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where did you guys first open when tell us a little bit more about that transition from
that land, bring your own job, right? Because that's largely the reason why this podcast even exists, is because when we first got Heart Eyes over Asheville, people were like, hey, cool it. When we visited the second time to try and do more diligence, they're like, cool it, you got to bring your own job. And so this was we didn't expect that it would be necessarily paying our bills, but we figured that this would be a good way to help bring our own jobs. And so it's one thing to like it in your first 5 days. It's another thing to say, we're going to figure out how to make it work. And then how did you start to make it work?
It was not easy. We moved to Costa Rica, and frankly, it was easy. We rolled up in our bus, we opened a restaurant, and we had a line out the door the first day. So we kind of had this, I guess, beginner's luck. Have you guys ever read The Alchemist?
Yes. I saw that coming a mile away.
That book comes up all the time, I feel like, on the podcast.
But absolutely.
So when you want something, the entire universe conspires to make it happen. And the idea that the first time they make it easy to kind of encourage it, really, our experience aligned with that. And and so we kind of left with maybe an undue sense of confidence.
Heard.
And so we came to Asheville. We're like, great, no problem. There's room in this market. We're going to start a chocolate company. It's going to be amazing. So we started French Fried Chocolate right away. It was a home-based business to start. So we built a chocolate studio in a portion of our small house. We certified our kitchen with the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. We actually got it certified organic when we first started. And we made chocolate truffles from home and packaged them and sold them at local farmers markets. And we thought, just mom and pop, work from home, kids running around at our feet. It's going to be amazing. And it was. We were at the farmers market. We were meeting all of our local farmers and connecting with the food shed and the agriculture scene. We're building relationships with customers, many of whom still support us, meeting our friends. It was just an amazing way to become a part of this community. That said, financially, not so much. It was, we had a little bit of savings that we brought with us. We watched that dwindle. We were not able to create a financially sustainable model. And we got really scared, and we actually did make the decision to quit. at a certain point, we can't do this. We have 2 kids. We have to be practical. We have to get a job. But what kind of changed was, we had a friend who came to visit, and we were telling him our sad story, and it's not going to work, and we have to quit. And he said to us, our friend Andrew said, "You can't quit. The world needs your chocolate." And again, not really great advice, not super practical, but more of an intuitive sense. We were like, okay, we can do this. And kind of relit the fire, reminded us of what we came to do. And we doubled down. And Dan actually did get a job, but it was a job rather than to replace our small business, it was to support our small business. And kind of gave us that little bit of financial security to be able to live another day and keep going. And then from there, we signed up for a class at Mountain BizWorks.
Mountain BizWorks strikes again.
I knew that was, it's like Ramp. Like, everybody says Ramp, Alchemist, and Mountain BizWorks.
Yep.
So we signed Asheville. We signed up for a business plan writing class. And we wrote a business plan for French Broad Chocolate Lounge. And you can imagine at the time how crazy we sounded. Like, we're going to start a chocolate restaurant. People are like, that sounds great. Do you really think that's a good idea? But we wrote our plan. We went to, at the time, Asheville Savings Bank. We got a small business loan. We found a small space to rent. It was on South Lexington Avenue. So what's now occupied by the Rue. That lower level was the first location of the Chocolate Lounge. A lot of people still very much miss it. A lot of people are very emotionally attached to that location.
It's a beautiful location.
But you can still find your chocolates there.
And you're there still.
I know, it's so sweet. And we thought it was too big at first. We're like, I don't know if we can support this space, but we signed the lease. Almost immediately after we signed the lease, the economy was declared in recession, and the banks kind of like closed up. They stopped lending, or were much more conservative with their lending, had a lot higher requirements. But luckily, we got our tiny loan, and were able to open it. And we opened February of 2008.
And for those of you who might be out of towners and haven't moved to Asheville yet or don't live here, the size difference between Chocolate Lounge V1 and Chocolate Lounge of today on Pack Square, I'm going to guess it's 10 times bigger.
No, it's not 10 times bigger, but the big thing that was an issue that we had to fix with the original location, well, there were a couple of things. One was our capacity, because it was our seating was on 2 levels. We could not have more than, I think it was 49 people. And we were repeatedly scolded by the fire marshal for exceeding capacity, to the extent that they were threatening to close us. Of course, they care about keeping our community safe. So we ended up hiring a host position to sit outside the door and count people in and out. Okay, 2 more in. People would walk by and be like, what club is that? But that was certainly unexpected response. We didn't realize how much what we were building would resonate with people. It was, just amazing to see the line out the door down the street for chocolate.
Wow.
I would remember, driving up and seeing that and thinking like, what did we do? But so the capacity was the major reason why we had to move. And then it it was 3-story building. So the first story was, the cafe and the little cafe kitchen. And then the second level was more seating. And then the third level was our pastry kitchen. When we first opened the lounge, we only had the lower level, and we baked at home and drove everything every day from our house to the lounge. And then after a year and a half, the 2 floors above it were still vacant. So we were able to get a deal we couldn't refuse and move our kitchen finally out of our house and into the lounge. But, as you can imagine, 50-pound bags of sugar and flour and chocolate coming in on the first floor, climbing up to the third floor, being made into magic, back down, and then
Buns
up
of
to the second
steel.
floor to bring to customer. Yeah, right? Yeah, it was kind of like our CrossFit. But, it was hard on our staff. So, those 2 things, we actually approached, I'm going off on a tangent, but our landlord with a plan to put in a staircase in the middle of the chocolate lounge so that we could increase our capacity. We're like, we'll put a staircase here and then we'll have another exit and we can get from 50 to 100 people. And our landlord just looked at us and he was like, do you want to go look at another space?
Yeah.
and he took us to the location on Peck Square. And, a lot of people miss the sort of coziness of the low ceilings and the kind of basement hobbit hole feel. We got to the Peck Square location. It was, high ceilings and filled with natural light, and we loved it.
At what point then did you make the actual jump into Peck Square?
So that opened in 2014. So we were at we were on Lexington for nearly 7 years, I think.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. The thing that I'm thinking about is you now have, it's one thing to consistently fill a space. It's another thing to get great real estate in downtown Asheville, which is, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago, it'd be easier than today. I haven't looked at real estate in downtown Asheville. I just imagine it's hard to get. And it's a wholly other thing to be nationally recognized as a very important brand. How do those things start to happen? And then I'd love to try and understand some of the, unit economics or the way that because you went from non-viable, this isn't going to work, to my buddy Andy said, no, don't quit. And now all of a sudden your fire marshal's mad at you and telling you need to stop letting people in. There's a lot of kismet, a lot of universe conspiring in your favor. But what are some of the steps in that process?
I would say, what are the steps? I keep thinking in terms of moments, but there was a moment when, the chocolate lounge was going really well, was really popular. And I want to say it's not easy. And the way that we try and do business and exist in the world is expensive. The quality, the amount of things that we make from scratch, the way that we source and buy ingredients, the amount of money required in managing staffing and payroll. And food service and food in general is just tough business. So as far as unit economics, it's tough. But at the time when we were kind of in the chocolate lounge, successful, small business, we felt like mom and pop, that was sort of a value system. And I think it's kind of a value system of Asheville in a way. But we were having a moment where we're ambitious and we think we've created something cool that we could continue to take to more people. But struggling with that sort of identity crisis but what does it mean to grow? And is that gross and dirty and corporate,
a sellout.
Yeah. So there was one beautiful evening. It was actually the second Blind Pig Supper Club, which was I haven't I don't even know if that still happens, but it was a dinner that the location was not disclosed until the day of the event. We participated, we collaborated with an amazing local chef, Mark Rosenstein, and created a dinner called Fire and Chocolate. And every course had chocolate or cacao in it and was cooked over an open fire. It was at Mark's house in his yard. It was, oh my God. In addition to pairing chocolate with every course, there were Mark's a pyrotechnician, and so there were fireworks paired with every course.
Oh my gosh.
It was amazing. But after that, everyone went home. We were sitting around a fire pit with Mark, just talking about our community, talking about Asheville, talking about business. And I swear there's a point. And we were talking about this dilemma of, do we stay or do we grow now? And what we kind of, the epiphany of that moment was, we believe in what we're doing, and we think that there's beauty, and that's something to offer, that we believe in bringing to more people and potentially other communities. And that made it feel like something we could get behind, like a right livelihood choice. And it still motivates us to this day to bring what we're doing to more people. A big part of our mission is, in chocolate making is buying cacao and being a part of a movement where we, as a small craft industry, we push up the price of cacao by paying more. So the more chocolate we make, obviously the more people who can enjoy the chocolate, but also the more cacao we can buy. It's little things like that propel us forward.
Yeah. And support, I also, to clarify, it also means like you're supporting the people that are growing the cacao in a better way by paying them better wages.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And, as an organization in Asheville, we also, it's cool to grow our organization, to create more jobs, to build like a professional level team. And that's of course been tumultuous this year.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'm curious to know, has there been an instance, and this is not by any means to say like, mm-hmm. oh, look at the mistakes you've made, but like, has there been an instance where maybe you did grow or you tried to expand something and it like didn't work out the way that you thought and you learned from it?
Of course. I mean, that is a part of growth. Succeed, fail, succeed, fail. Like that's just, and I have grown tremendously over the past 12 years, and I have more of a, not only an acceptance, but like an appreciation for that. Like if you don't fail, mm-hmm. you're not trying hard enough. So yes, for sure. I mean, the chocolate factory we built is still like in a proving ground phase. We opened here at the end of 2018. And we're still trying to balance like what's our capacity and what's our market. And like 1 minute it feels like, oh my God, we have all this capacity and we can't possibly sell everything we can make. And the next minute it's like, stop selling, we can't make enough. This year is challenging just because of, the COVID related challenges of spacing people apart and supply chain challenges and team challenges. And so it's been kind of we've had to slow down. Yeah.
Well, I want to step back just from Mississippi to say I love the idea of like a this I believe type centering experience for finding one's own sense of power or your business's sense of power and potential. I am inspired by that. I don't know. Early days, I think Sarah and I did some hard work to try and write words like that and believe them. I would love to revisit and do something like that here in this last quarter of 2020. So I love that. And then 2 is that we actually recorded one of our episodes in the French Broad Chocolate Factory on the second tier with Zach from Strength Ratio. So someone on your team said it was okay. I don't know if it was you. And I made a mistake while recording it, but that space that it's like a Willy Wonka's experience when you walk down, you get to watch the actual factory making chocolate, and the smells are overwhelming, and the sound is like, I have apps that I pay for to get a sound like that to just happen in the back of, my headphones for productivity. So I'd love to hear more about what is happening in the ramp space that seems relatively new. Should people go there? Should they go to the Chocolate Lounge? Why would you go to both or one over the other?
Thank you. We built the Chocolate Factory in 2018. Is that right?
You said it a moment ago,
yeah.
So I trust that it might be right. It's at least close.
My poor brain. So we built the Chocolate Factory to make more chocolate, to make better chocolate, but also to provide an experience that connects people to the source of chocolate. So we built it with a lot of transparency and storytelling in mind. We have posters up that introduce people to our cacao farmers and producers, and our local partners. We have a classroom where we do tours and teach people about cacao, where it grows, how it's transformed into chocolate. We built the production facility with huge picture windows so that people can come in and see the chocolate being made. So that, that space is meant to be to invite people in for an experience. So that's kind of the purpose of the factory. There's a cafe there as well. So like you mentioned, we have people who regularly come there to work. The Strength Ratio people are awesome. They stop by a lot. And, we have like espresso bar and a few pastries and of course our chocolates. And yes, you will leave smelling of chocolate, and the sensory experience is quite amazing. The Chocolate Lounge is more of a it's more of a decadent dessert destination. So we've got a whole menu of cakes and cookies and brownies and drinking chocolates and ice cream that we make from milk we get from farm to home. It's got a lot of seating, a huge outdoor patio. It's a dessert restaurant. This year we've actually put some attention there to try and tell the story of the fact that we make our own chocolate, because it's something that really sets us apart there that we just didn't feel like we were doing a good job of communicating. So we're trying to do a better job of that now to kind of connect the two. But they both kind of have different purposes and different vibes. And I hope they're both worth visiting.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's really helpful for people to know the difference, because it may not be always that intuitive, especially if it's your first time coming. And I also want to point out, and I don't know very much about this, but when you say we make our own chocolate, right, that's different from like, hey, we take a chocolate bar, melt it down and turn it into something else. You're starting with the raw product. And I don't know what what happens to get to chocolate, but
you'll have to come on tour.
I know. I mean, but like if you had to identify, you don't have to go into all the details, because I also don't want to spoil anything that someone would learn while visiting. But is there like a basic 3-step process to get that you can explain, kind of overview?
Yeah. So it all starts with cacao. So we can't do anything without sourcing great cacao. That's becoming more and more possible as more craft chocolate makers come on the scene. Craft chocolate kind of following in the footsteps of craft beer and specialty coffee, where more attention and intention is spent on sourcing great ingredients and on attention to process and sensory impact of kind of like the human involvement. So taking chocolate from an industrial process and really exerting more control and decision making over the outcome. So the cacao comes from the tropics. It grows all over the globe, 20 degrees north and south of the equator. So it doesn't grow here. We have to source it from elsewhere. Once the cacao it's a tropical evergreen tree, and the cacao fruit is a pod-shaped fruit. It has seeds in it. The seeds are about the size and shape of almonds. And the seeds are fermented on site and dried. And that's how we get the raw material, cacao, fermented and dried cacao. That's then roasted and winnowed, which is separating the husk of the seed. And then that is what you would call cacao nibs. And then that's refined with, sugar, cocoa butter, in some cases, if it's a milk chocolate, milk powder or butter, to make the chocolate. And then we, of course, transform the chocolate into confections and desserts and drinking chocolates as well. So yeah, it's a lot of work and labor, from farming, all the way to like fine detail hand garnishing a 1-inch square bonbon, and like packaging it by hand and serving it, with gratitude. It's a lot goes into that, a lot of people, a lot of intention to get it from, the beautiful raw agricultural plant to, a sipping chocolate.
Wow. And at what step in that process does it hop on a boat or a plane and come to the U.S.? Is it right after fermentation, before roasting for you?
It has to be dried. So a certain amount of moisture has to be removed from the fermented seed. Otherwise, it would just be moldy by the time it got to us. So
makes sense.
The seeds are fermented in usually a wooden box, a quite large wooden box. It has to be dried, and it's usually dried in the sun. So it's removed from the fermentation boxes and laid out in a thin layer and dried in the sun. It grows in the tropics, so it rains a lot. So a lot of times there has to be a roof cover over the cacao, but it's super important to get enough moisture out of the seeds at that point so that it can be transported without developing mold.
Yeah. And is there like an easy way to tell?
At this you can't miss it.
Yeah, well, I know once it shows up, it clearly wasn't dry enough. But before,
they can measure the water content. Wow. And that can be a high tech or a low tech process, but usually it's they have a target of moisture that they need to achieve to ship it.
Heard. Well, I can't wait to take the tour. So that is one thing. And then the other thing is I love the idea, and you said this a while ago now, but the idea that you presented of being so successful in business that you can flip economics on its head, which bless you. John, maybe keep that, maybe not. But that you can flip economics on its head. Typically, with increased demand, you can drive down pricing from your suppliers. That's like the goal for most businesses, is to have enough customers that you can turn to your suppliers and say, hey, I need a better price on this. And what you're saying is you want to do a good enough job doing your part in the supply chain that you can pay more to your suppliers. And I'm fascinated by that.
I mean, there's still unit economics in that it's better for our suppliers to sell us a container of 13 tons of cacao rather than 150 kilo sack. So certainly there's a pricing structure that, improves when you buy more, just like with most things. But the idea, or like a driving force in craft chocolate, is to push the price of cacao from that of a commodity to a specialty product. So a commodity meaning, this cacao is the same as this cacao. That's how a lot of agricultural products are priced on the world market. So there's a world price for cacao, and it hasn't meaningfully changed in a long time. So, with inflation, it's like the price has actually gone down for farmers. Most cacao is grown by small farmers who live in poverty. So it's, there's a lot of improvement, and we don't overestimate our ability to change an entire industry. We're just a tiny little drop in a vast ocean of chocolate. Sounds really great, actually, a vast ocean of chocolate.
It does.
It sounds really
I'm sorry, I got distracted.
Like a vast river of chocolate that suctions you up into a tube.
But we're a part of a community of people who are bringing attention and transparency to this issue. And big chocolate is starting to pay attention to what is happening in craft chocolate companies. So hopefully we can see, the slow progress that the industry needs to become equitable. There's a lot of inequity in power and economics in cacao and chocolate.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think when people go to buy your products, knowing that is helpful, because I think people show up and are like, "Whoa, these chocolates are so expensive," because you're so used to buying $2 chocolate bars at the grocery store that price difference is so crazy. I'm trying to think of another example. I know that there is the food world or in the commodity world.
We've had a butcher shop on in town,
Yeah.
And the idea of like, how much are you asking for ground beef? I can get it at. It's a shame that Acme is actually a supermarket, but like I can get it at Acme Co. for pennies.
Yeah.
It's like, what went into that?
Exactly. And like, there was I had an employee, Lisa, who set maybe a decade ago, who summed it up so succinctly by saying cheap food means cheap labor. And that's generally what you're missing when you get whatever, a $3 gallon of milk. Milk is like so intense. Like, milk is such a big part of our business. So we've been pretty involved in trying to source milk that we feel good about. And it's it's another industry that just got completely industrialized. And there are farmers who are trying to bring integrity back and bring health back. And that it costs money. It takes time. And yeah.
What type of words are directional for a consumer to see on a package? I know that in my own limited research and experience, I'm starting to believe that the word organic doesn't mean as much about the quality of the process or the pay to the employees, so much as you were able to pay to get a certification. Sometimes that's prohibitive for certain farmers to go through that process. And so what words might be better directionally for like, I'm putting my money where my mouth is?
Sure. So my answer to that is generally it's based on trust and relationships. So if you go to your local coffee roaster and you say, like, tell me about your coffee, and they're like, oh my God, this is an amazing single estate Honduran coffee, and it won the World Cup coffee this year, and there's a woman's cooperative, like they know and they tell you. You can't put all that on a tiny label, So that's the first place. And that's in our sourcing. The first thing we do is build relationships and establish trust. From there, then, we rely on certifications as like a backup. If I'm buying cashews there's no cashews grown in the United States. You know, we buy a certified organic product because we don't know any farmers in, you know, Turkey where most cashews are grown. So, you know, it's not the best answer because it puts more work on sellers, on makers, and on consumers to seek information on what they're buying. So, you know, it's like I would look for like craft is a word that a lot of people are rallying around as a way to symbolize intention and sourcing practices and quality of ingredient and process. Direct trade is another one that can be misleading because there's no real established definition of it, but it tells you at least that the maker has relationships with the people that they work for. Yeah. Looking for a particular location or farm. I mean, it's like any of these things that craft makers are doing, big companies can mimic. So you'll see a single estate chocolate from Hershey's, you know, at Michael's. You know, I've literally seen that. And so, you know, it's hard. I like talk to your producer. That's why like everybody loves, not everybody, but at least in our community, it's so popular to go to a farmer's market and get your vegetables. I'm like, what's this? That's kohlrabi. What does it taste like? What do you do with it? You know, just like connecting with the source of our food, I think is something that as a society we got away from. We felt kind of, I don't know, we found industrialization and that was exciting. And there was a lot of innovation and people kind of got disconnected from their food. And I think now people are really coming back to, I want to know my farmer. I want to know my brewer. I want to know my coffee roaster. And chocolate is sort of just following in that established kind of farm to table path.
Yeah.
I think that's a great answer.
So I have to imagine that when you were in your kitchen, however many years ago, rolling truffles and realized that was the thing you wanted to do, you didn't know as much about chocolate as you know now. And I'm just curious how you learned so much enough to open a chocolate shop and learn how to use this equipment and like actually make the chocolate from scratch. How did you get there?
You know, it's like there are people within the company that know a lot more about chocolate making than I do. Like, it's not what I spend my time doing. That said, like as a company, it's just doing it and learning from others. So the craft chocolate community, another cue we've taken from craft breweries is collaboration. So we're building this thing together. A lot of like 10 years ago, there wasn't like a small chocolate equipment company for the most part. So a lot of companies were kind of in like a garage phase where you would build a winnower that was a shop vac connected to a PVC pipe that sucked the shells from the cacao, or roasting, you know, in a convection oven on a sheet pan. We were just kind of like doing a lot of things, kind of a DIY style. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, we would attend conferences, meet other chocolate makers, and then build this community. And so, you know, we call each other and ask questions when we're stuck. You know, how do you do this? Do you have any connections for this? And just learn from each other. You know, I'm sure that there are programs like CIA in Napa Valley has a chocolate making program now. That's coming, but there was no chocolate school. You know, there's like pastry school and cooking school, but there's no chocolate school. So it's just do it, learn, fail, do better, you know, still every day.
I love that for so many reasons. One of the things that you pointed to was this idea of collaboration amongst chocolate makers. One of the things that I particularly loved about my outsider's perspective of French broad chocolate is also that in our small little town is that you've created a product that partners really well with other brands locally. The only people I see doing perhaps as good of a job is Spicewalla, because it's like it's competition proof-esque, and you make everyone better by having your product. And so seeing you at, the Rue, it makes sense. Seeing you on the menus of restaurants in town, it makes sense. It's like this great partnership, collaboration, rising tide, and rises all ships, or whatever the actual metaphor is. But I love that. And so has that always been a focus, partnerships, or is that something that you've, I guess, become more aware of in the last couple of years?
I think that it's always been a part of our company, and it's just grown. Like it's definitely, I would say, a value of Asheville.
Yeah.
Is that we, a small business, we support each other and provide a platform for each other. So yeah, whether that's us, putting Spice Walla on their logo on one of our taco bars, or like them putting us in a giveaway. Like it's like you said, high tide lifts all boats. And the chocolate industry, the craft chocolate industry, is also very collaborative. So we've got this intersection of, a collaborative spirit of Asheville and of the craft chocolate industry. So we just really know no other way to exist other than like, don't do your best, don't be afraid of what others are doing, and that makes us all better. We for the first 5 or 6 years, no, for the first 10 years or more of our business, we had a chocolate bar library in the lounge, and sold other people's chocolate. And that was like what you could call enlightened self-interest. Like, of course, we bought it and marked it up and made a profit on it, but it also like benefited us because we're helping to build a context for people. If you come into a place and you see one chocolate bar on the shelf and it's $9 and you're like, what? But then if you see a whole library and they range from this one's $5 and this one's $18, you start to develop like a context of a new industry. And we get to support and make sure that we're building a durable industry that we want to be a part of.
And I don't know if this makes me feel shame or not, but I think your reason for doing that makes so much sense. It's a menu. It creates context on pricing specifically. I'm like, oh yeah, obviously. But then I was like, oh, because then you could see what flavor set people are drawn to, and like what is actually moving. Maybe we learn how to put some sea salt on our chocolate. I imagine you already were, but so one of the things that it made me think of is, are there any trends in chocolate that you have specifically avoided or think are like over the top? There are, there's like section of chocolate bars in, let's just say, Whole Foods at this point. And some of them are very different than the chocolate we grew up thinking about as kids. Like Hershey's was all I knew. And so you're, CBD oil chocolate. It's interesting. Are you equal opportunity chocolate seller?
We know our lane. That doesn't mean it's all the same. We've offered everything from like a super, textured, rough, ground Mexican style chocolate all the way to the super fine, like lusciously full of cocoa butter, melts in your mouth before you can even, get it off your fingers, and a lot of things in between. I don't prefer unroasted chocolate. Like the raw chocolate movement is something that we haven't done. We don't make that. We have offered, there's a great company out of Brooklyn that does an unroasted chocolate called Rica. They're really good, but it's mostly just aligned values and quality. Just like any industry, like craft beer, just because it says craft beer doesn't mean it's going to be good, So we just look for things that are good. But definitely what you said, like that was kind of a big research project. We didn't quite realize it, but then when we like we didn't always make chocolate. We used to, when we first opened, we bought chocolate, and then as our sourcing values became more defined, we we had another moment. I remember walking outside the chocolate lounge with Dan, and we decided, like, oh, fuck, we have to make our own chocolate. Like, we need to be connected to the source of our cacao. It's the heart of our business. And so, that was, and it's almost like, it's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful plant, a beautiful process, but it definitely, like, is so much work, so much extra work and extra space and extra equipment, but it felt like an imperative.
Yeah.
So, just we bought other people's chocolate for 10 years. And then when it came time to package our own, we had a lot of history to say, like, people like this in packaging, or this flavor is overplayed, or everybody buys if it has salt in it, So definitely, like, we did acquire a lot of information and experience from selling other people's chocolate.
Wow, that's fascinating. What kinds of things are you thinking about now and for the future for French Broad Chocolates? Like, what are kind of your goals or your dreams for the next few years?
It's such a hard time to ask that question, because we definitely came into 2020 like raring to go, ready to grow. We were looking at opening up a location in another city, and then the pandemic hit. We, like, shut down. We went from 90 employees to about 9 overnight. And have since, in what's it been now, like 9 months, we've built back to about 65 people, which feels great. But, I feel like we're just coming out of that emergency mode, like picking our head up, like, into looking around, like, oh, yeah, where are we and where are we going? And so it's kind of like like, this has been an opportunity for us to question everything, to look at every single thing we do, process we have, and ask ourselves if it's right, if it's smart, if it, if it needs to be rethought. Everything from our shipping process to chocolate making to confections to packaging to how we, run our retail. Like, everything has been kind of rethought, and now we're kind of in a space where we're able to get back into dreaming and planning. And I still think there's a lot of potential for French Broad Chocolate to grow. We hear a lot from people who want to bring something like this into their community, so it seems like there's a resonance that goes beyond Asheville. So yeah, there's all things are possible.
So in the growth from 0 employees working in a home kitchen to multiple locations in a town and national, I'd say, awareness, what changes have happened in you, right? You say that, like, I'm not thinking about making chocolate necessarily. That's not my role anymore. How have you grown over the years?
Never ending process. I am, like, always trying to do better and be better, and I have very high standards, and I'm very self-critical. But I think it's, just a process of trying to build something that takes care of people and place, and honors people and place. And it's, it's not easy. And I definitely screw up a lot and have over the years. And I look back, at how far we've come. And, I definitely feel like a different person. I think I've come out of my shell a lot and have gotten accustomed to speaking to people, doing public speaking and interviews and things like that. So, and just representing the company it's been a process of growth, and I still feel like I'm a kid and like I have so much to learn. And that will never stop.
I wonder too, and this is well, I'm just going to ask this, but like as being a woman and maybe kind of an entrepreneurial world where there are a lot of men, like how has that played a part in your growth, or do you think that has played a part in that process?
Yeah, definitely. We first started our first business in Costa Rica, and that's definitely was a machismo culture where people just looked right past me, so, and then, it still happens here, like it's in certain contexts, especially like you're around, say, a conference table at a bank or something, and it's all men, and people just naturally turn to the man for the answers. And so I've gone through a process of not even being aware of that, to recognizing it, to having feelings about that, to just moving past it and like, taking my place at the table. And society has grown along with me. So it's luckily we're making progress in the role of women in everything, business, in this case. So it's I don't want to say it's something to overcome, but there were expectations and traditional roles that I had to go through a process of rethinking.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I'm asking that because I feel like I am also going through that process in many ways of like, oh, okay, like, just there's this natural sense of, I think, lack of confidence sometimes with females, not always. And I don't mean to put women down, but it's a struggle that I think finding our way of like having confidence is something I'm always thinking about.
In your evolution from small business owner to what feels like I've made a distinction in the past of like someone who's self-employed to someone who's an entrepreneur. You're at a place now where, having had 90 employees to back to 70-ish, like there's a team. You're building a thing that is bigger than you. You're a full-fledged entrepreneur. That evolution, that progression, has that been, do you have like a cohort that you've worked with, other chocolate company owners that you touch base with? Do you have coaches? Do you have mentors? I've seen a huge change in my wife in the last handful of months as she's like focused on her crew. And I think that might be part of where this question was coming from a moment ago. And I'm wondering, is there any crew in your life?
For sure. It has varied depending on the time, but I've had a team of mentors. I've been in a lot of kind of peer support groups. Right now I have a group of CEOs of small businesses in Asheville that, we meet regularly and talk about issues that we're going through. And, it's important in a leadership role to be able to have people outside your organization, to be able to have a, safe place to explore and like challenges and bring back new ideas. Definitely the chocolate making community is super tight, and I have a lot of really good friends that I can reach out to, whether it's, management issue or an equipment issue or a growth question or a sourcing question. I definitely am smart enough to know that I don't know even remotely close to everything, and that my business is better if I ask for help.
Yeah.
Seems universally true. And the best of us seem to be able to send out that bat signal to the crew faster than others.
Yeah. Well, and I think I hope that sharing your story and other entrepreneurs in Asheville helps kind of along those same lines, like shows people different ways and shows people that, you know, you don't always have to have it completely figured out. Like you said, you learn things just by doing it and not necessarily going to school for opening a chocolate factory.
Yeah.
So the future's uncertain. Your growth has been seemingly tremendous. Any other thoughts that you want to bring to the table about French Broad chocolate? Because we could transition towards our making it in Asheville focused questions. Anything else top of mind for you with your company nearing the end of 2020? This might air early 2021, but end of 2020, what are you thinking about?
You know, like I said, it's been a year of kind of holding steady in the storm and with a focus on survival. And now that we're feeling more stable and more safe, it's time to dream and scheme and plan, you know, and explore those different possibilities.
Cool. I love that. I'm like dreaming and scheming.
Dreaming and scheming. Put that on a t-shirt. With a specific follow-up to that, I don't know what today looks like for you in like a ratio, but sales from your spaces, sales online from French Broad to sales through partners. Where do you? What are the averages or weighting across those three? And those are the three that I think of. Maybe there are more. And do you see it staying that way, or is e-commerce going to be even a bigger deal because less foot traffic? What are you thinking about with that?
So we mostly sell our chocolate through our own retail locations.
Okay.
When the pandemic first hit, we definitely flipped the script and it went mostly online and just a tiny bit in our retail locations. We had just the lounge open for takeout, tiny menu, only, no dining in or anything like that. So that we focused all of our attention and effort and marketing on online. And then as Asheville began to open back up, our sales have shifted more to retail again. Wholesale selling, through other retailers is a smaller part, maybe 10% of our overall business. Internet might be 5 to 10%. Most of it is sales through our own retail locations, which is kind of what we feel, is what we're good at. It's creating an experience for people to enjoy chocolate. And my answer, like, what words should we look for? We're better when we can tell you for an hour why to choose our chocolate. But that's harder to do on a shelf with a package. So growth in retail and creating experiences in other places is definitely kind of the direction that we feel has the most potential.
Yeah. I mean, that made sense to me. I wasn't sure what the world looked like. It seems like getting picked up by a gigantic retail brand could be, on paper, this wild opportunity, and would be, but also to your point, it's like you buy the best meat when you get to talk to the butcher, right? Like Chris Farley, Tommy Boy quote is real. And so like, the same is true with chocolate, I suspect. And otherwise you are, one of many in a section of chocolate. Makes sense to want to own the experience and own the customer. I look forward to your 2021.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move into the final round of questions, which we always call the speed round, but it's not really that fast. It's just a little bit of lighter questions.
There is a speed. The speed is just not fast.
Yeah, okay. It's more the random round, I guess we could call it. It's kind of random questions. Tony?
Sure. Is there a childhood chocolate moment that stands out to you?
That should be such an easy question.
Because the hands tingling chocolate moment is like,
it kind of takes the cake.
Takes the cake. But I'm just wondering if when you were a kid, you were like, you woke up from a hangover from chocolate and you're like, I'm never doing that again. JK, doing it forever.
No, that's still me every day. I have flavor memories, so definitely I can conjure the sound and the experience of unwrapping a Hershey Kiss. I can remember what it looks like to watch the little crystals of chocolate dissolve in a cup of Swiss Miss hot cocoa with marshmallows in it. I can, remember my mom's chocolate brownies with mint frosting slathered on the top. So I have not a particular moment, but lots of sense memories.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I love that. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to go get chocolate after this.
I like to say I don't like sweets. And then Sarah's like, what are you talking about? Like every time, yes, you do. You love them. I want to be someone who doesn't. But we have probably one little itty bitty. This is new for me. One little itty bitty square of chocolate almost every night.
I love that.
I love it.
Ritual is such an important part of chocolate.
Yeah, I agree.
My ritual as a kid was just like whole chocolate bar, which is not healthy. Don't do that at home, kids.
Okay, so what is your favorite chocolate pairing? This might be difficult because I know you guys make a lot of different things, but for you personally, what flavors do you like to pair together? Or it could be something that's like not a part of the chocolate itself, but adjacent.
Well, I like the experience of thinking about chocolate through the lens of cuisine. So thinking about, Indian flavors like rose and cardamom and pistachio, or chili and cinnamon. There are so many flavors that are traditional in other cuisines that are so fun to play with in chocolate. As far as pairing chocolate with something else, chocolate and beer are pretty magical together. Chocolate.
I thought red wine was my. I bet you
red wine is actually pretty tough to pair well. It's way more traditional, but red wine and chocolate they have a lot of similarities. They're both quite, intense flavors and tannic. So they can kind of compete, and one can just take over the other. And you taste the wine, you taste the chocolate, and you're like, I don't taste anything, or vice versa. There are pairings that are magical, and ideally when you pair something, there are three ways it can go, right? One, the pairing makes it worse, makes something good bad. Two, they're both neutral. And three, eating one thing makes the other one better. Those are exciting. I will say, I'm going to change it from beer to cheese. Pairing chocolate with cheese is terribly exciting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Give us an example, just one, one cheese, one kind of chocolate. How would you pair those?
Well, just like you would with wine, you would look for different flavors to play off of. and you might look for something really complementary. So if it's like a super buttery, like brie, you might look for something like a salted caramel to pair with it. Or if it's, you can, like have things that are kind of opposites that play, something really sweet paired with something spicy. It's a really, it's a fun medium to explore.
Oh boy. Okay. I'm going to come to you, and I do a lot of recipe development and stuff. So coming to you when I'm doing chocolate
just
stuff.
opened a Pandora's box where I will be my,
I'm feeling it. It's mind blowing.
Poor me. That's so fun. Okay. So that's tasting. Any books that you've read recently or media that you've consumed recently that really stands out that you're telling a lot of people about?
Like a lot of the country right now, I am doing my personal work in understanding racial inequity and how I can be a better, more informed human in that regard. So that's been my recent reading list, how to be an anti-racist. Always recommend that. I'm reading a book called Caste, which kind of frames race relations in the United States compared to the caste system. And that's really fascinating as well. Wow. That's been my literary world in the last few months. So that's kind of what's on my mind.
We're with you.
Fantastic. Okay. Finally, the magic wand question. This is the question we ask every podcast guest, which is, if we had a magic wand or someone in our audience had a magic wand, what one thing would you ask for right now?
Okay. May I have a one-shot pauser that makes the process of bonbons much more successful for our team.
Bonbons.
Equipment. So it's a piece of equipment that our chocolate factory, like I said, we built it to make more and better chocolate. So we really scaled up our chocolate making equipment to be able to dial in flavor and texture and make something
consistent, I imagine. No.
Yeah, consistency is because chocolate is I'm going on a tangent again. Chocolate is a food that reflects the raw material, the cacao, and raw material is not something that you can necessarily control. So just like with wine, you would have your 2017 vintage that maybe it was a dry year, and so the sugars were really concentrated, and the wine is sweeter this year. So consistency it's more like how to bring out the best in from the raw material rather than consistency. I'm gonna change my answer.
So no more bonbon perfection.
No, I want that too. I want that too. But the genie or the wish granter.
Yeah.
I want to be able to congregate with people. I want to have dinner with a friend. I want to hug my loved ones. I want to have a place where we can safely be together again.
Yeah. I think we're all in agreement on that right now.
You are not alone.
Yeah.
Please listen.
Yes. I've got 2 kids. They're 13 and 15. And I think no matter what age you are, this is hard, but it's sure hard to be a teenager and not be able to connect with your friends.
Yeah.
I know we have no crystal ball to look into, but if anyone was thinking that teenagers were going into the VR world and going to live there and never come out, exacerbated, I suspect, by growing up in a time where a pandemic exists, and so does AI and these crazy Minecraft worlds. Seems a lot more fun in Minecraft than outside.
Yeah. Anyways, okay. So collective magic wand universe. We'd all like this. Well, thank you so much, Jael. One last question, which is if someone in our audience wanted to connect with you, where can they find you on the internet?
Our website is frenchbroadchocolate.com. And you can buy our chocolates. We ship everywhere in the United States, and you can learn more about the intention we put into what we do.
Fantastic.
We'll have links to all of the social thingies on the pages that we make on the podcast and our website. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.